It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
Off and running. Welcome in another edition of Musso at the box. Fired up to have you along. We continue to roll along here, previewing the Baton Rouge Regional, LSU, the 1 seed, Little Rock, the 4, DBU, the 2, and Rhode Island, the 3. Gets underway 2 p.m. on Friday. We have you covered wall to wall here on Musso at the box. Smash the like button, please, if you have not already. Get subscribed on the YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast app. Just search Musso at the box. You can take the show with you wherever you go. Follow me on social media, on Twitter X at Musso Matthew, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram as well. Okay, today what we want to do is postseason Q&A. You know how we like to do it. Set times kind of throughout the year, right before the season starts, at the beginning of SEC play, end of the season, and then as you enter postseason play as well. And that's the part we're at. So I put out the call on Twitter. Y'all flooded me with questions. Again, a lot of some duplicates. We'll group some of them together, but a lot of really good stuff. We'll go through pitching plans. We'll go through some of the offensive struggles, or they are what they are. I had a question about the strength of the regional as well. So we'll go through it all, and I'm fired up to do so. And look, we're going to go ahead and get started on doing that right now. We'll start just with pitching, and we'll start with Friday. Boudreaux asked, do you think it's guaranteed that Cade Anderson or Anthony Ianson start on Friday? Yes, I do. And let me first start this conversation by going on record once again and saying it is not what I would do, ever. Like, if I were the coach, and I'm not, and I'm very glad that I'm not, I don't really want that job or responsibility ever in my life. But if I were, and I was a 1 seed, I'm pitching off. Like 9 times out of 10. And more often than not, 10 times out of 10. Because there's many ways to skin a cat in a regional. I've seen LSU pitch off and get into a little bit of trouble, but be able to outslug their way past the team. I've seen LSU this year go through the midweek slate, and but for one game against Northwestern State that had a rain delay in the middle of it, and they got dominated, I saw LSU absolutely dominate the midweek slate. So while this offense has their issues, and they can outslug a 4 seed. I firmly believe that because I've watched them do it all year long in the midweek. I would pitch off. I would go Newt and somebody else after, and a bunch of people after that, whether it's Shores, Myers, I don't care. Just a bunch of guys after. That's what I would do. And then I would have Anderson, Ianson ready to go. And I know what people are going to say. Well, what about the short rest on the Super Regional? You know what? I've seen it done before. So, what do you like? All right. Like, I've watched so many different teams pitch off, go through it, and be fine. It's a preference for the head coach. My preference would always be pitch off. Because I'm trying to get out of this in 3 games. That's my goal. 3 games every time. I want to sweep this weekend. And by having your 1 and 2 on the back end, I think that gives you the best chance. Now, Jay Johnson is not going to do that. Jay Johnson leaves nothing to chance. Jay Johnson is very routine-oriented. Jay Johnson's teams are that way. Jay Johnson, in his time at LSU, just like we had the conversation with the SEC tournament, circumstances have been different, but there's never been a time at LSU, you can even go back at Arizona, and it's very sparse, where he has pitched off. He will throw his ace. Now, this year, you have 2 aces. That's a great thing. So if we break this down, in 2022, you were a 2 seed in Hattiesburg. You threw Mikhail Hilliard against Kennesaw State in that first game. Had Ty Floyd ready to go for the marble, but at that point, your rotation was very unsettled. But Kennesaw State was a pretty good offensive team, and I think that game ended like 12-11 or something ridiculous like that. You threw Mikhail Hilliard there. And you actually got to 2-0 in that regional and advanced. In 2023, the only time you've been a host, that is the biggest example of this, He threw Paul Skeens against a 19-win Tulane team. Now, there was some weather and stuff involved in that series as well. But Jay Johnson said after, like, he backed up his decision like that was what he was going to do, whether or no weather. Paul Skeens against a 19-win Tulane team. And then a year ago, you're a 2 seed on the road. You're facing Wofford, and you have the number 1 North Carolina team. But you had 2 aces in a sense with Gage Jump and Luke Holman. He went Jump in game 1, Holman in game 2. So whether you've been a host or on the road, this is what he's done at LSU, and he's going to do the same thing here. And, I mean, you look at Little Rock, that's a team that, man, their record's not impressive. I understand they've had injury problems. I understand all of that. They were, supposed to win their league or whatnot, picked like second in their league, all that. I get all of that. That's a team that had lost 13 of 14 games going into their conference tournament. They were the last team into their conference tournament. They got hot. They won it. Okay, well, now they've won 5 games in a row. Jay's not going to leave anything to chance, and he's going to throw his best, and that's either going to be Anderson or Ianson. The interesting thing there is you did throw Ianson in that game Friday in the SEC tournament. So if you wanted to use him, he would also be on a regular rest. But I think it's also tantalizing to go, okay, Cade Anderson, and then have Anthony Ianson on an extra day rest for the Marble game. But yes, if you just look back at Jay's track record, that is what he is not going to pitch off. It will be Anderson or Ianson. And if I had my guess, I'm saying he's going to throw Cade Anderson. We'll know right before first pitch on Friday because Jay's not going to announce any of that. Sup Tyga said, Supa Tyga said, Kaysen versus Chase conversation. What does Jay do? Reliever in game 1 or 2 or game 3 starter? You're going to function that the way you have the last, month? And, it's interesting with Kaysen Evans because he did not pitch in the SEC tournament, so he is very rested, although he's carried a large load, and he's a true freshman, so you do have to start watching that inning count where it's going to get to a point in this postseason where he's going to be close to throwing the most innings he's thrown, in a season before. But I think they function that just the way they do. Look, I'm going to tell you, if I'm going to start somebody game 3, I'm hoping it's Kaysen Evans. Because what Chase Shores has done out of the bullpen for you recently has just been so awesome, and he looks so comfortable that I'm not willing to move him there. Like, this is what everyone wanted at one point, was someone else to emerge in the bullpen, not named Evans or Cowan, so you could have more flexibility in the rotation. And I think the way they've worked that here down the stretch, the last 3 or 4 weeks or so, really starting with that Tennessee weekend, has benefited them. And I think you continue to see that. Now, that being said, if you need Chase Shores and Kaysen Evans to polish off one of these games, you do it. You do it. But the emergence of Shores to complement Cowan and Evans gives you a little bit more flexibility, because now you could go to Shores to close one out and Cowan to close one out, and you'd have Evans. Or you could go to Evans to close one out and Cowan to close one out, and you'd have Shores. So I think, honestly, they still function that the way they have been. It's the way the team works best, and it really shows off the pitching depth that we've talked so much about this year, and now it's just finally on display because you've had enough guys emerge. So, Super Tiger, I think they do that kind of the same way. All right, more on the pitching. So, in terms of game 3 thoughts, game 3 starter, as well as if you have to go to a game, in this case, a game 4, but in the regional sense, it would be a game 7. Like if you have to get to Monday, or a couple people even asked about the losers bracket. So we're going to group all of these together. And here's what we'll do. So as I said, just kind of taking game 3, like say LSU's 2-0, you haven't used Kaysen Evans, you're starting Kaysen Evans. For me, that's the way to go. Or if you want something a little off the wall, I heard someone bring up Newt. That would be interesting to go Jaden Newt, have him give you your 4 innings, and then try to, close it out the back end, the last 5 or whatnot with Kaysen Evans. But I I would rather, if you're in that game, that Sunday game, you have to be beaten twice. That's the position you're in, which we all hope that's the position LSU's in. My preference there would be you're facing a team that has come through the losers bracket. They are down on pitching. Your offense should be able to produce. And I want the guy on the mound that I know is going to get me off to the best and most dominant start. And I still think that's Kason Evans. And then the further you get into that team staff, hopefully the more runs that come, and you can close it out, with Newt, with Rizzy, with guys like that. So for me, the ideal game 3 starter would be Kason Evans and or Chase Shores. But as I talked about in the previous thing, Evans, because I like Shores in the bullpen so much right now that I don't want to move him. So for the record, my ideal game 3 starter would be Kason Evans. Now, if you're talking losers bracket for LSU, well, hold on. Let's say you do start Evans, you lose that game. Your opponent forces the game 7 or game 4 on Monday night. What would you do there? And I don't really have a good answer for you there because we'd have to see how it plays out. My hope in that situation would be that you haven't used Jaden Newt and you could start Jaden Newt. Like, that is my hope in that spot. So we have to wait and see. Like, that would be my ideal scenario. If LSU is forced into a game 7 or game 4, the Monday night game, my ideal scenario is you have not used Jaden Newt and you can use him to start that game. But again, it would depend on how the game night before goes. Like, that's a very fluid situation. And the same thing is true for the losers bracket. And this was Cooper at GoCoop_30, or excuse me, at Go_Coop30. Who do you think starts the potential games 4, games 5 if LSU has to go through the losers bracket? And that's where the depth of the staff would get tested. And look, I think LSU has plenty of pitching depth, but anytime you go through a losers bracket scenario, you would need guys to step up. And again, that would be very fluid. Who hasn't pitched at that point? Right? So you're looking at Anderson Ianson would have most likely pitched already. So you go through it and you go, okay, well, has Newt pitched? Has Evans pitched? I'll throw out a dark horse for you as a starter, and it's Jacob Myers. So Jacob Myers has appeared in 14 games this year for LSU. He has not started, but he was a starting pitcher at Nichols. He was a starting pitcher at Nichols for 2 years through a lot of innings. Now, you look at his inning total this year, it's only 12 1/3 in 14 outings. They've brought him along slowly because they had to get the command where they wanted. As of late, it looks like they have. He's been about 64% strikes his last few times out. He's been awesome. He threw 2 1/3 innings. You extended him in the SEC tournament. Not only was he a starter for 2 years at Nichols, as a freshman, he started the opener of the Tuscaloosa Regional against Alabama and threw his best game of his college career. That game ended up going into extra innings, and Alabama would pull it off. But that was as a freshman. So the moment shouldn't be too big for him in a situation like that. That's a dark horse that I would throw out to you potentially there as a starter if LSU does fall into the losers bracket. But the rest of that is just so fluid because you're fighting back. I mean, look, in the College World Series in 2023, you ended up with Nate Atkinhausen, starting a game. Javen Coleman started a game for you coming out of the losers bracket. It was just who hadn't pitched. And that's what it is when you fall there. That's why it's not an ideal place to be. It's why it's hard to come through it. I do think LSU has the pitching depth to come through this. I'll tell you one guy I'm really curious to see is William Schmidt. Because William Schmidt has not pitched in 2 weeks, maybe a little bit more than that. But where William Schmidt has had some of his best success is against teams like Little Rock, like a Rhode Island, that midweek type of guy. And also, this would be a spot where, yeah, the competition maybe isn't quite to the level. I'm not trying to disrespect those teams entirely, but the moment would be big, and you could really see where he had it. Remember, this was where Kate Anderson really kind of started to turn it around, was in the regional at North Carolina. So that's another guy I'm really interested to see this weekend. So it would be all hands on deck if you fall into the losers bracket. But a guy like Jacob Myers, given on the caveat that he hasn't pitched, I think would be extremely intriguing as a starter coming out of the losers bracket because of the experience he has in that role already in his college career. All right, so that covers just about all the pitching stuff that y'all had. Alex Day says, will I see you in Omaha? You will not, because I will be at the beach, as is tradition. Let's see, which means we could have beach podcasts again this year, and I hope we do. We had that in 2023. That worked out pretty well. All right, a couple more. Christian Duplichin. When will our fan base learn to stop sleeping on / talking about how weak the regional is? Do we not remember Stony Brook Coastal? Yes, we all do. That is a little different, though, than this. A little different. Coastal Carolina won the national championship, so that was clearly a very good team. Stony Brook was inexcusable and should have never happened, but they were better than you on a given weekend. And that happens in baseball. But I look at this, and I talked about it in the preview. I love the draw. Like, I think it's a pretty good draw for LSU. I really do. You don't have a Power 4 program coming in here. And, man, I'll give a hat tip to College Baseball Nation on Twitter. They went through and broke down each regional and where each team ranked in certain categories in the tournament. Right? So, Dallas Baptist, their starting pitching, awesome. Their offense, awesome. Their bullpen ERA ranks 56th out of 64 teams in the tournament. Like, that's where you're going to get them. Their bullpen whip is 48th. Their bullpen FIP is 41st. You look at Rhode Island's starting pitching and their bullpen, it's just not a deep team. They've outscored everyone they've played because their offense is very good. But, like, I'll go back to something we said earlier in the podcast. I've seen LSU feast on pitching like that all year long. You've beaten DBU once, and you did it against their bullpen. You got 1 run off their starter. You got 6 off the bullpen. That tracks. So I'm not telling you we should sleep on the regional. I'm not telling you that LSU is going to coast through this. LSU is going to have to go out there and play their best baseball in order to get through it. You lost the game to Omaha earlier this year because you weren't playing your best baseball. You got run ruled by Northwestern State earlier this year. It is possible. But this is as favorable as a draw, Christian, as LSU could have gotten. Like, there's just no, it's a team you've beat, a team with a losing record that snuck into their conference tournament and got hot and won it, and credit to them. But if they don't sneak in, they're not here. And it's a team in Rhode Island that's one-dimensional. And if you can shut down their offense, which they haven't seen many arms like you. I know they went and played Oregon and things like that. And we're going to get into that in the next episode. Yeah, like, it's as manageable as a path as LSU can have. They have to go out there, manage it, and play their best ball. And if they do that, they should advance. So, again, I don't want to, sit here and just completely, poo-poo it. But it is a pretty manageable it is a pretty manageable deal. It is a pretty manageable deal. LSU BB fan, I don't know if that's baseball or basketball. Who's the guy that's going to become a dude this postseason out of the bullpen? I think it's Jacob Myers. I do. We kind of talked about that earlier in the show. Him and his starting roles and whatnot potentially is a dark horse, but I think it's him. I think he has shown that. And I mean, like, I don't even think that's a question for me. I think it is Jacob Myers. Garrett says, who do you think is the toughest matchup for LSU before they make it to Omaha? I don't think Dallas Baptist will be that much of an issue. Clemson, on the other hand. Clemson's got a lot of talent. They got a really good ace in Titsworth. They have Cam Cannarella, who's going to probably be a first-round draft pick come July. If not, he'll be, right on the edge of that. He's awesome out there in center field. They've got a couple other nice players as well. But, man, I watched that team go against the top of the ACC and really, really struggle. I watched them lose 2 games to Coastal, a series to Florida State. I watched them lose a series to North Carolina and get skunked by them again in the ACC tournament. I'm just not totally sold on Clemson. I watched that team early in the year struggle to put away South Carolina. I'm not completely sold. I think the Clemson teams back at Chad a couple years ago, the last 2 years, I should say, were better than this one, and the SEC kind of ran through them. So I like LSU's draw. I think that'd be a fantastic matchup. That's the one I'm rooting for. So, I mean, I would probably tell you Clemson because they're a host, but don't sleep on DBU at all either. I mean, that's a really good team with a lot of talent. So, and they have major leaguers too. I mean, Grant J on that Dallas. So it's either DBU or Clemson. I think that really stands in LSU's way. But we'll just have to see. Like I said, y'all, maybe I am way out over my skis on this. I just love LSU's draw. I think they are, like, in their regional and super regional matchups, potentially, I think LSU is head and shoulders the best team out of everyone there. And, I mean, you should be because you're a top 8 national seed. But it's just, and getting it at home, it's like, it's hard for me to, it's hard for me to see that. I saw another one that I liked. Brian says, will 2 weeks of non-SEC competition make this team better at the plate before they go to Omaha, or is the offense just is what it is? We haven't played a non-SEC foe in over a month. I think playing at home is going to make this offense better. Like, you bring up the non-SEC foe, and that's well taken. However, the last 2 SEC foes that LSU played at home, you run ruled them each. You beat Tennessee 12-2, and you run ruled Arkansas 13-3. Those were at home. LSU in 35 games at home this year has averaged 9 runs per game. The power numbers are up at home. Just everything's up. I think that will make LSU a better offensive team. Now, in terms of the totality of this squad offensively, when you factor in home, road, neutral, whatever, I think they are what they are. But that's not to say they can't get hot for a week and a half in Omaha and win the whole thing. Of course they can. You saw your pitching staff do it in 2023. Guys step up in big moments on championship teams. The question you have to ask yourself is, do you believe that LSU is a championship caliber team? I believe they're a championship caliber team. That doesn't mean they're going to win it, but I believe they're that caliber. So, yeah, I believe guys can step up. But if you're asking me for the totality of the season, I've seen this team play 57 games, and they're really good offensively at home, and they're not really good offensively away from home, whether that be neutral site or road game. Like, your 2 neutral site tests are the trip to Texas, where you face DBU, Kansas State, Nebraska, and Sam Houston, and that was a really good offensive week for you. And then it's the SEC tournament, where you scored 5 runs in 2 games. Away from the box, you've averaged about around 5 runs per game. At home, 9. So to answer your question, Brian, I don't think it's the SEC or non-SEC foe. Like, that's not going to hurt. But each of the last 2 SEC foes you faced at home, you run ruled them each. So I think playing at home is going to make that better for them. Hunter, what 2 to 4 seed do you think has the best chance to make it out of a regional? I love Florida and Conway as a 2. I absolutely love Florida as a 2 in Conway. Like, if Florida does not win the Coastal Carolina Regional, that's a big issue. In fact, they're the favorite to win that. I'm curious. Kansas and Fayetteville, curious. Not sold, but I'm curious. Just because Arkansas has struggled in their home ballpark in postseason the last couple of years. And Kansas is a really sneaky, sleepy team. And they've had a great year by their program standards. So that's interesting. I don't think it happens. I think Arkansas is incredibly complete. I think they do make it out of the regional this year. It'll be more interesting to watch them in the Super. Georgia Tech is the other one that I would really, really watch. Georgia Tech might actually be my answer. And it's no shot to Ole Miss. Ole Miss is plenty good. Credit Mike Bianco for really getting to work in the portal. Getting Hunter Elliott back and him being healthy has been huge. You got some great freshmen, like Federico and whatnot. But, I mean, the work they did in the portal at Ole Miss was awesome. And you credit Mike Bianco. He turned that team around. Again, it's kind of what he does. Just when you think he's down and out, he pulls you right back in. But Georgia Tech is the champions of the ACC. They won the regular season ACC title. They are not a host. They probably feel like they should. It's their coach who's been there forever. It's his final send-off. Like, that is a team that I would really, really watch. Is Georgia Tech. And I probably would tell you, I don't want to say they have the best chance because Florida's the favorite in their regional as a 2 seed. So, like, odds, they have the best chance. But Georgia Tech's a team that I like an awful, awful lot. In that regard. And then I'll be honest, that's pretty much it. I mean, watch West Virginia, but I don't think they're very good. I would say Kentucky is a 3. Watch them in that Clemson regional. They put a lot of pressure. They're going to keep it close and competitive. It's just, can they get over the hump and run games, which they haven't been able to do this year. But I would definitely keep an eye there. But that's probably about it that I would have for you. I think the rest of, like, kind of the SEC teams got a tough draw. Like, I like NC State's club a lot. Auburn's a really tough draw. Auburn's been great at home this year, and that's a really, really tough lineup. So, like, as much as I like NC State, I don't love their draw. Like, I think UTSA is a really good team, mid-major. They have to go to Austin. I don't see it happening. So TCU is the other team that I will give you. TCU is the other game. They feel like they should have hosted. If you don't believe them, just ask their fans on Twitter. But I think that team and program believes that they should have hosted as well. And they're going up to Oregon State. And while Oregon State is very rested because they didn't have a conference tournament because of an independent type deal there, I'm curious if that's a detriment to them or not. So keep an eye on TCU. That's also a really tough regional where you have TCU and USC as your 2 and your 3. They did Oregon State no favors. They said, look, man, if we're going to give you the regional host after being idle for a week, you're going to get some tough teams. TCU. So I'll end it on this. I'll give you Florida, Georgia Tech, and TCU. Those are the 3 2 seeds that I would say really, really watch. And the 3 would be Kentucky, but only if they can get over the hump. And they end up in Baton Rouge if they could. So let me refresh one more time, see if anybody has added questions that I can get to before we wrap. And the answer there is no. So please smash the like button, get subscribed on your favorite podcast app and on the YouTube channel. Follow on social media and be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.